It's another glorious sunny day here at Zolder. Good morning. Welcome to the main race day for round 3 of the Blancpain GT Series Sprint Cup. We had a lively qualifying race yesterday. There was a start line accident. There were debates rumbling on well into the evening with fault found of Frank Stippler, and he was given a stop-go penalty converted to a time penalty for his part in the accident. He's pretty aggrieved about it, and will start, of course, near the back of the grid for today's race this afternoon. The teams that were involved in the accident yesterday have been hard at work as well with car repairs, and will now get a chance to test those as they venture back out onto the circuit for this warm-up session that's 20 minutes long, and the cars will be out on track in just under 10 minutes time. There is barely a cloud in the sky. It's another hot day, as I say. We've had some glorious weather all weekend, apart from a very brief rain shower yesterday. Let's see what the weather gods have in store today. David Addison and John Watson trackside at a fabulous venue. It's proper old school. And of course, we celebrate a 35th anniversary this weekend of when Watty won the Belgian Grand Prix here with a typically mega drive, John.
Well, David, that's very kind of you to say so. It's a long time ago. Tragically, it was a weekend where one of the legends of Formula One lost his life, and the circuit irrevocably will remember that by the alteration to that particular corner. It's now called the Villeneuve chicane. I wish it wasn't called that, because it would be nice to have had Gilles Villeneuve still amongst us, but yes. There we are. There's the racetrack. 3 sectors, 4 kilometres in length. We counted as 10 corners within the 16 there you see on the circuit map, but on the official map they counted as 10. But it is predominantly a right-hand corner racetrack.
Sure.
Mostly the left-hand corners are in the chicanes, with the exception of turn 1, which is a left-hand corner. But it is the left front of the car that is the one that gets the most work. The left rear gets almost the same amount of work. The chicanes, and there is the Villeneuve chicane, it is a possible overtaking position. You'll notice this morning that we have got those marker cones back in position for the warm-up. Now, they were removed for the 1-hour sprint or qualifying race on Saturday, but they're back in position both at the Villeneuve chicane but also at the first chicane, directly behind the start-finish straight.
Now, as far as the championship is concerned, in the Sprint Cup, Maxi Buch and Franck Pereira head it on 41 points from Mirko Bortolotti and Christian Engelhardt on 36. They didn't score yesterday because they were one of the crews involved in the start line accident, and Stuart Leonard and Robin Frins won the qualifying race yesterday. With all due respect to Stuart, we kind of feared that he was going to end up being mugged by the pack behind, but it was a tremendous drive that he put in. He was helped in part by one of his WRT teammates, Marcus Winkelhock, who was running third, attacking Michael Meadows, who was second, and therefore with Michael having to defend, he was unable to attack 100% for the race lead. But even so, Stuart, who's not done too many seasons of racing, did not put a wheel wrong. It was a great effort. And also we had a good first stint by Andrew Watson there in number 59 McLaren, but sadly he was deemed to have been out of position at the start, and so copped a drive-through penalty. Pro-Am yesterday won by this car, Carlo Van Dam, who's not raced here for 11 seasons, and Piti Bieron-Bahti, who's not raced here at all. Carlo Van Dam counting it as his home circuit because he's Dutch, even though he races and lives in Asia these days. He's originally from just over the border, and he was delighted to be back on almost home soil. It's a spectacularly liveried car, that. We've seen it in the Sepang 12 Hours. It's raced in the Asian GT Championship. Straka Racing had a tough night because they had to repair the Comme Ledegar car. It was Comme Ledegar who was the other driver involved in the accident, along with Mirko Bortolotti, Comme Ledegar sharing with Johnny Kane. But as I was saying a moment ago, the man that in the end copped the responsibility for it was a very aggrieved Frank Stippler.
Yes, and I mean, I've seen a variety of different angles of that incident. We saw on replay the head-on view, which gave you one perspective, and there was a multitude of perspectives, all of which have been looked at and mulled over and whatever by the race stewards. And also we've got here Christophe Bouchou, who is acting in a sort of the driver's perspective role, but assisting with the stewards in regard to how any analysis of an issue on the grid or at the start, as we saw yesterday, could be determined. And Frank Stippler, and I think he's got grounds to feel unhappy because there were 3 cars involved. I think the view that was taken was that the Lamborghini of Bortolotti and the McLaren of Ledegaard were sort of in a position where they couldn't avoid one another, And the view was that Frank Stippler in the Audi, who was directly behind the two of them, he had an option, which was to back out. And I think it was simply because it would appear that he didn't exercise that option, that therefore the guilt for what occurred seemed to fall more on his shoulders than the other two drivers in their respective cars. But I mean, I understand it's at the start of these events, particularly here in Zolder, well, the racetrack is the standard width. In fact, it's wider than many racetracks. But the proximity of the wall on the pit side and the wall on the spectator side, it effectively makes it look much narrower. And there is nowhere to go on the right-hand side of the track, and there's very little room on the left-hand side of the track. It all comes down, ultimately, to the driver's control. But we have a field of 33 cars, and effectively the last cars were just about exiting the Jackie Hicks chicane when the front row of the grid was taken. And some people are so far back, they actually can't necessarily see the lights above. And also, a lot of these cars are sprouting full-on rear aerofoils. So a lot of the forward vision, in terms of being able to pick up where the light is and when the light goes to green, is becoming an issue for drivers. So there's, I think, a number of contributory factors involved in many of these start line incidents, but ultimately the control does rest with the competitors themselves, and if in doubt, lift off. The trouble is, the person behind you may not.
Indeed.
And that's the downside. You might do the right thing, but the guy behind you, or the gal, it might be a gal behind you, just is on it, and your eyes lasered into your rear lights, and wham, bam, whatever. Thank you, David.
Good night, ma'am. Yes. You've looked at the driver CV of Mirko Bortolotti. Just a quick check on the tech spec of what's been one of the cars to beat, the Lamborghini Huracan. And there are two of these, Norbert Siedler and Ezequiel Perez-Compang, drive 19, and Christian Engelhardt and Mirko Bortolotti, drive number 63. Just to finish off the Frank Stippler story, they're still talking about it this morning, but they can't appeal it. It's, even though it's a time penalty added on at the end, that is because you can't have a stop-go once the race is finished. So he's been given a stop-go penalty, converted to the addition of the time post-race. You can't appeal a stop-go penalty, can you, Bentley? Remember Monza, and so he's stuck with it.
Yeah, and I mean, he's having to carry that forward. So it is an unsatisfactory outcome for Frank Stippler in particular, because he's the driver that was adjudged to have been the one that could have maybe had an effect on what might have been an inevitable incident between the Lamborghini and the McLaren, but maybe not quite so severe.
The Bentley has had a pretty frustrating time this weekend, but it's a mighty beast with its twin-turbo 4-litre V8 engine. Andy Soucek and Maxime Soulet, the Belgian driver, one of three Belgians on the grid. They drive number 8. Vincent Abril and Stephen Kane share number 7. In terms of Belgian drivers, Maxime Soulet, Dries Van Toor, and the third is Enzo Eid, who will, of course, come here as reigning champion. They had a pretty frustrating start to the season, Enzo Eid and Christopher Mies, but they got 6th yesterday in the qualifying race, which was a good recovery, helped in part by one or two having dramas and penalties ahead, but even so, both Enzo Eid and Christopher Mies raced very hard indeed. Maxime Soulet, third in the Endurance Cup last year. He's a former class champion in the European Le Mans Series. He's a Belcar champion, knows this place extremely well. The only problem he had yesterday, he said the car feels great, but it's just not quick enough. And whether that's something in the Bentley, something in the BOP for a circuit like this, well, the team was hard at work with the data last night to try and find a bit more pace in that car. Audi seemed to be having a real role yesterday, and having been quick across the practice sessions, good in qualifying also was the 17 Stuart Leonard, Robin Frins, R8 LMS, and other cars from both ISR and also WRT up near the pointy end. Now, this car got a penalty yesterday in the qualifying race. 84 is Maxi Buch and Franck Pereira. The car was deemed to have had the engine running while in the air. Now, you can't do that on the way up, and you can't do that on the way down. You've got to turn off the engine, lift it, drop it, fire it up. And the stewards understand that the car was lifted with the engine still running, so a drive-through penalty was given to Franck Pereira. He was running in 3rd place, had a chance of winning the race. He ended up 16th. So a very frustrated driver indeed, as the cars now venture out onto the circuit for 20 minutes for this warm-up session. It doesn't affect the grid. It gives some that don't know Zolder that well a bit more track time. It gives the teams a chance to make sure that all is well after yesterday's travails going into today's race. you don't even have to go out. There might be some teams that think, no, we've nothing to achieve by going out. We'll just save the car and save the rubber.
Indeed, I think saving the rubber is one of the factors that everybody is very conscious of. And as I've alluded to, the Zolder circuit is a circuit that is quite tough on the left-hand side of a car. And if you are maybe a little bit marginal because of how you used your tower allocation through Friday and Saturday, then maybe you'd be circumspect. But I suspect it's always good to give both drivers another sighting of the racetrack. As we see the 17 car, that was the winner yesterday, Robin Freins and Stuart Leonard. Interestingly, I spoke to the engineer, the lead engineer on that 17 car, and he said, what a fantastic job Stuart Leonard did under that pressure.
Yeah.
And he said, of course, Robin Freins, he is a special one. It was lovely. It was lovely to have that little remark or observation made by a team member, somebody who's directly involved in running that car, to actually not just single out one of the two drivers, but within the whole WR Audi team, as within any team, there are some that are a little bit more special than others. And he mentioned that Robin Freins is one of those.
It is interesting as well, because if you wind back a few years, everybody was saying how good René Rast was, and he is, there's no question. And then somebody from WRT said about Laurens Vanthoor, I reckon he's better than Rast. And Laurens Vanthoor became the good driver, the real star, and now there's another special one in Robin Freins. So it's great to see this continuing wave of very talented drivers in that team in this championship.
Yeah, and these drivers are drivers who have basically stalled out in their aspirations in single-seater championships to move forward, and they've come into GT racing, and sometimes the reasons they come in are not the reasons that are the kind of commitment as this is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
But once they become a part of it, and actually book just watching the 84 Mercedes AMG go over the hill and down into the compression, but once they realise what a fantastic race series this is and just how competitive it is, then all of a sudden there's an embrace.
Yeah.
And Laurens Vanthoor, single-seater career stalled out. Robin Freins, he's still doing other single-seater series, but he wanted to be a Grand Prix driver. Not everybody can be a Grand Prix driver today.
And also, you can spend a fortune through single-seater ranks trying to get to Grand Prix racing. In this, you can earn money. If you get picked up by a factory, by a manufacturer team, then you can earn a living rather than have to spend to be frustrated trying to get in one of those few seats in F1.
Ooh, big
Triple
problem.
threes, Daniel Kalvitz, we're told, at the wheel, locking up at the first left. The left, effectively. There is 74, the Kevin Chekon and Frank Stippler Audi. Kevin Chekon is at the wheel of it at the moment. We've not yet got lap times up, but we'll start to see who the quick cars and quick drivers are this morning. There's no reason either why you have to cycle both drivers through. You might do it for a practice pit stop, and you might also see at the very end, after the checkered flag, a practice pit stop being taken just before you put the car in the garage. So 67, Nicky Pola is the man that has done the best time so far, 1:33.922. There is the winning car of yesterday, Stuart Leonard being given the track time, the seat time this morning.
Yeah, interestingly, the track conditions, I would say, are pretty good, because even though it's now 10:15 a.m. in the morning in Zolder, it's quite warm, but track temperature is probably still not up to the level it will be later in the afternoon. So these are quick track conditions, and will give the teams maybe some indication as to what they might contend with when they start the race. It'll be a 3:30 p.m. start this afternoon, so it'll be a long layoff as the 17 pulls over and lets the Lamborghini go through, the 27 Lamborghini, which was involved in itself in an incident in the chicane directly behind the pitch when one of the BMWs, the 98 BMW, I think,
yes,
side by side coming in, there was contact, and then Gustavo Yuckerman appeared to seek to take some revenge. A yellow flag being waved there. It is a puncture.
It's a white flag, I think, isn't it? Slow-moving car,
is, yeah.
And you can see why it's a slow-moving car. Number 74, 75, 75 it is, isn't it, from ISR? And that is Clement Schmidt, who's not yet done a flying lap.
Let's have a look and see if we can see the reason why. A big lockup coming down. Now did he get a puncture coming down the hill, or was that
down? Couldn't he?
Certainly, there's something that looks that really it's hard just to get a view. The front wheels are so enclosed. So he's coming back, but the amount of rubber that's being burned off by bodywork. I'm surprised the tyre is still there.
Yeah.
Fortunately, it's a relatively short lap. That happened halfway round the lap, but that car will be in the pit lane. It's now entered the pit lane, and still smoke pouring off that right front.
So in he comes, and this eats into the 20 minutes that they are given. There is the spectacular Ferrari of Piti Bhirombhakdi Carlo Van Dam. Number 39 it is. It's one of the Pro-Am cars. Bhirombhakdi given the track time this morning, understandably. He's probably the only person in the paddock who thinks it's a bit chilly, given that he races in the humid temperatures of Sepang, for example, the Thai-based driver. But for a number of seasons he's been part of Asian GT, now coming to do more and more European racing, having learnt well. And this car being operated, the Ferrari, by Kessel Racing. So it's a crack team behind it as in comes 75. And is it going to be as quick as just change the tyre, or are they going to want to have a look at why it's gone?
I think they're going to swing it around. They've got the dollies under the car. They might swing it into the garage to just have fun, because when a tyre has gone down and that kind of rub is going on, you might want to take the opportunity. There's no pressure. This is not a race. It's only a warm-up. So you might take the opportunity, take it into the garage, give it a better look. All the team can look around. It's only 2 permitted on the pit lane. And with people coming in and out, you don't want to be doing that kind of work on the pit lane.
So they go to work, but how many laps will they do before the end of the session? There is the Romain Monti Audi ahead of Piti Bhirombhakdi, working his way through the Jackie Ichtbocht, which comes onto the pit straight. Fastest, incidentally, is Jake Dennis at the moment in a car that he and Peter Schrothorst managed to get to the top time in both FP1 and FP2, and the time this morning is a 1 minute 30.221 ahead of Marcus Winkelhock in Audi number 2, the runner-up, the third place driver, I should say, in yesterday's race, along with Will Stevens. So again, there's good pace being offered up by the WRT Audis. There is Jake Dennis, the Brit, comes over the timing line, and the former Formula 3 racer, part of the Racing Steps Foundation, the colours of which are still carried on the car, works his way through the first left, and he's gone faster still on that lap.
Yeah, he's improved yet again. So again, indicative to me that track conditions are conducive. Now, we don't know how much fuel they've got on board, whether they're trying to simulate what would be a mid-race fuel load, but certainly that's a strong lap when you consider this is a warm-up and not a qualifying session. And Jake Dennis on that last lap did marginally improve. He can't improve his position, he's quickest. Certainly ringing the neck going through the chicane as he hops, skips and jumps as he makes his way up the hill and then down the compression and down to the Villeneuve chicane.
74 in for a tyre stop, and that is the Frank Stippler driven car now. Done a driver change. Kevin Chekhov and Frank Stippler share 74. Stephen Kane in Bentley 7, this Audi, 75, although we know about that, and 333 have yet to do a lap time, and we're almost at the halfway point of the session. So some people going for a time, some people doing different things within this session, and of course others having the session hijacked by a problem, like 75, Clement Schmidt. Right, Stippler out of 74, Kevin Chekhov in, and this is still the quickest car in the session.
Yeah, so you can see on the screen the orange sector times 28.8, 33.4. So he is not going to improve on his fastest overall 1 minute 30.023. In fact, it's only half a second slower, and that would, if that lap was his best lap, it would be 4th quickest overall. So very strong pace right now from the number 3 team WRT Audi, driven by Jake Dennis, Peter Schorhorst. Improvements further down the field, the Sunderlock Racing, Romain Monti, he's gone 4th quickest, and the 43 also improving. So that's the Stracker Racing, Johnny Kane, Com Ledegar.
We're having a warning on the screen about car 85 respecting track limits at turn 6. That is turn 6, and the marker cone is on the floor. I suspect we found the guilty party, haven't we?
Somebody's found it, but certainly the marker cone ain't going to magically go back into the position that it was in, and therefore anybody going through the chicane, will they say, well, I don't know where the marker cone should be, and if I use a bit more, well, it wasn't my fault.
Not my fault, Gov.
Not me, Gov, exactly. Yeah. And that's the difficulty of having those marker cones, is that once hit, then they're gone.
Yeah.
Interesting, Marco Bortolotti, but with Christian Engel behind the wheel, 63 Lamborghini, it's now gone 2nd quickest, just over a 1/10 of a second behind the number 3 Audi.
Bentley 8 heading into the pit lane. That was Andy Soucek at the wheel. Are they going to cycle Maxime Soulet into the car now? As in comes car number 1. So this is the Enzo Eid, Christopher Mies entry. Enzo gets out. Christopher Mies gets in. A great combination they made last year to win the Sprint Cup. Christopher Mies, one of those many sort of USB drivers.
Here's
plug him
the
in and watch
guilty
him
party.
go. And Enzo Eid has developed as a driver as well.
No,
He's not the guilty party. It's already gone. We know it's 85 because he's been warned about it.
Look at him. Yeah, but just look, indeed. I just saw the car coming up. I was getting overexcited, but clearly you could see he used where the part of the chicane where the cone would have been. The penalty is there's quite a severe crest on that curb, and it flicked the back of the Lamborghini up.
In comes 59 McLaren, 86, heads for the timing line. Now this is a car that's 6th fastest with Dominic Baumann at the wheel of it, another of the HTP run Mercedes. Dominic Baumann, who starred a couple of years ago in the German GT Championship, and has now become a very important part of the HTP squad in this car that he shares for the purposes of the Sprint Cup with Jimmy Eriksson, who's another of those drivers moving from single-seaters. He got as far as GP2 into GT racing and is proving to be very good in these cars as well. His brother Joel, currently one of the stars also in the FIA Formula 3 European Championship. Christian Engelhardt's Lamborghini up to 2nd fastest, so showing no ill effects of its accident yesterday. It was out at the first corner, but it's been put back together and going very strongly this morning. Number 19, Norbert Siedler at the wheel, the sister car, only 16th fastest. 85 in for a stop. So another of the HTP fleet of Mercedes, with Fabian Schiller having done the first part of the session. The tyres changed, only 2 mechanics to change the tyres, so you've got to be fit to do this. You've got to lug them around as well as be quick and inch perfect with the gun.
Yeah, I mean, it's all a choreographed piece of work by HTP. Everybody practices, and there is one way, which is the quick way, which I think the top teams have all worked out, some time ago. But it is so easy in the course of trying to be so quick. As we see, the Mercedes 86 makes its way into the pit lane. The white line will be around the corner. That's where they've got to slow down to the mandatory 50 kilometers per hour in the pit lane as the Bentley is waved out, but slightly stuttering. Okay, he's got it fired up now, and there he goes.
Christopher Hasse ready to take over his Audi, which is the car that he shares with Romain Monti, which was going quite well. 5th fastest, in fact, as we get into the last 7 minutes of the session. Norbert Siedler, who made his name initially in single-seaters, can say that about almost everybody in this. Then he went into Porsche Carrera Cup and Porsche Super Cup and starred there as well. Now a Lamborghini driver with aplomb, working his way down now towards the Boulderberg right-hander into the Rindt kink, and then the short straight to the X-Bocht.
The sister car to the 19 back out on track, right? With Mirko Bortolotti behind the wheel, and Bortolotti is probably considered marginally the faster in single lap time in that car, but Christian Engelhardt has done some stunning work in conjunction with Bortolotti. So with just over 6 minutes of this session to go, with 4 or 5 cars, maybe 6 cars in the pit lane. Still a busy racetrack, but it would be interesting to see where Bortolotti gets to as the 19 Grasser car, that's the sister car with Norbert Siedler, now it pops up into, he was up into 3rd place, but it's Markus Winkelhock who's eclipsed 3rd and 4th by going 2nd. So Winkelhock back up to P2 where he was earlier in this 20-minute session.
There is Bortolotti, now down to 3rd. He's got the road to himself briefly. 33 cars we have in the Sprint Cup this weekend. We've not seen a fair number of them. A fair number, that's stretching the point. We've not seen 4 of them, I reckon. So there are some that have elected to miss this morning. I'll try and work out in a moment who they are, but you've got there the Lamborghini 3rd fastest into the X-Bocht.
So Mirko Bortolotti, this will be the beginning of his first flying lap. So let's get a view with 5 minutes to go. He'll get 2 flying laps in before the checkered flag comes out. So he's on his way.
Yeah. Those that we've not seen, perhaps understandably, the AM Cup entry, Steve Earle and David Perel, because they just want to come and enjoy themselves. They don't need to be driving around this morning. Another one that we've not seen, or in fact another pair, the 2 Rover Racing BMWs, 98 and 99. Now, that's intriguing because those cars, again, were struggling a little bit for pace yesterday and they're not out on track.
there's undoubtedly a reason. If it was one, you might say, well, there's an issue, a technical issue, but if both cars aren't on track, then is that a strategic decision by the team? We're not going to be really, well, the Marcus Paltala car was 26th, and the 99 of Philippe de Costa, they were down in 14th place. So, I mean, one might speculate, are they going to make any bothers going out to practice in this session, or have they got issues and that's not a good way to throw a wheel down, because that can roll away. And somebody had to put their foot on it just to ensure that did not occur.
So we've got one or two fears of people speeding in the pit lane, I understand, that the stewards are going to have a look at after the session. But for now, let's concentrate on the times. Audi 1 and 2, but the third place Lamborghini breaks the timing beam and goes up to second. Mirko Bortolotti doing a 1 minute 30.084. And there is the tranquil scene, Rover Racing, the BMW sit and wait. And there's no urgency, there's no panic.
There's no one there. Well, if they are, they're hiding.
Do you fancy a BMW? Door is open, it's all yours.
One careful only, my man. Never raced or rallied.
Now let's go and see if we can find anybody. The trucks are closed. I did see a mechanic early this morning, but there's clearly nothing going on. The door is open. Lord knows what they're doing in that transporter. Even the cameraman's fearful of finding out. Somebody emerges.
I mean, that is unusual to see a team.
Absolutely.
Present, two cars in the garage, but literally they've just simply taken the decision that they don't need to do, or they're not going to do, this morning's 20-minute warm-up. Christopher Mies just up to 4th place in the number 1 Audi, makes his way through Lucien Bianchi. That's the right-hand corner that leads onto the straight behind the pits.
Jules Gounod has got up to 7th in his Acura ASP Mercedes. There is Christopher Mies that John was just talking about. We saw him taking over from Enzo Ede and flicks his way through the chicane, which is effectively turns 5 and 6. It's the first of the 2 chicanes, the second one being the Villeneuve chicane, which is here, turning right and then left. There's a driving standards flag to number 333 Ferrari Daniel Kylwitz for disrespecting the track limits.
And Bortolotti also getting a track limits warning, must respect track limits at turn 8. So Mirko Bortolotti has just gone second quickest. In the process, must have maybe used a bit more of the off-track track as opposed to the black tarmac track. Number 1 Audi. Let's have a look. Christopher Mies really just setting up now. He's on it. Decided to take it fairly easy. So we look at the 58 McLaren coming through. That's Ben Bonacut and Alvaro Parent. And that would be, by most standards, the car along with Rob Bell and Andrew Watson that you might look to deliver for the Straka Racing and the Straka Racing and what's this? They run them under 2 different names. Straka Motorsport. Straka Racing and Straka Motorsport. Up into the Jackie Eakes chicane. Jackie Eakes was president last week throughout the events in Italy and representing one of the principal sponsors of the event.
This was the historic Millibillion, was it?
I didn't want to mention it, David, obviously, but yes, you're correct, yes.
Well, I understand it had a stellar driver lineup, including some real heroes in Porsches, John, is that right?
I don't know about that, but I mean, there were some, some leg ends, as you might call them, of motorsport as Baz Linders looks through rules and regulations.
That's interesting.
And
what's he looking for?
Well,
what's he after?
But he's certainly brushing up in the event that he needs to respond quickly.
Yeah.
Interesting, Jules Gounod has just gone fastest overall in Sector 1, currently still in 7th position. So there is the number, that's the number 90 car. 87 is the car that Jules Gounod is driving. The 90 currently, look and see where it is, on the top. It's in 8th place with Marcello, how do you pronounce that name? Raffaele Marcello.
Yes.
Marcello.
Checker flag out, and number 90, which is the Raffaele Marcello Mercedes, takes it. Well, he's about to take it, I should say. We never got a time out of number 75 because its damage after the puncture kept it in the pit lane. Marcel Fassler didn't go out in number 5, nor did the Phil Quay Florenzo Case Ferrari nor the 2 BMWs. So does that mean that Steve Earle did go out? No, he's not shown as being on the timing screen either. So quite a handful we didn't get a time out of or didn't go out.
Jules Gounod has gone third quickest.
Good effort, eh?
Very good effort. I mean, considering that is a Pro-Am car, but Jules Gounod, very much the son of his Jean-Marc Gounod, who was pretty spectacular as well as successful during his professional motor racing career. Even probably more spectacular now he's racing in historics.
Yeah,
I've seen him wring the neck of a DBR1 Aston Martin, one of the finest chassis ever produced by any manufacturer in the motor racing history.
Yes, he was always flat out, wasn't he, Jean-Marc Gounod? There, going through is 888. That's the David Perel car.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm getting number blindness about the Steve Earle David Perel car. It was there all along. Apologies. So they did go out and they did 11 laps. So they were getting on with it. Their yellow flag being waved to warn people to go down the pit lane because the session is now over, and to be cautious as they come down the pit lane. Yesterday we saw almost a collision, didn't we, between a car that was coming to the pits but behind a car that was braking for the chicane.
BMW.
The BMW nearly went into the back of it.
Yeah, it did. I mean, that's always the danger of a car that's on a lap, braking into the chicane, and the car behind, of course, not understanding that if you're going through the chicane, you've got to slow down. If you're coming in the pit lane, you don't have to slow down. So it was almost a severe motorway-style rear-end accident.
Yes, true.
But was avoided, and if it's avoided, it doesn't count.
So Peter Scotthorst, Jake Dennis's car tops the times. Jake is with our reporter Dakota Jane.
Jake, now you set the fastest lap in the warm-up. It's a shame you're starting P25 today.
Yeah, it's obviously a disappointing race yesterday. Obviously we were fastest in practice on Friday, and then qualifying went pretty well. And then obviously today, we're obviously P1 again, but it's going to be hard to do anything from P25 in the race, but anything can happen. I'll try my best.
Now you suffered a problem yesterday. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, obviously Peter was in the car at the time, and he came over the radio and said that he had a wheel nut issue, and the left rear came loose, so we had to make an unscheduled pit stop, and sort of ruined our chances of a good result, really.
Let's see what you can do in the race. Thank you very much.
So the pace is there, but that also answers what happened yesterday for number 3, that with Peter Scotthorst back in the car playing catch-up, was doing very fast lap times. He did, for much of the race, have the fastest lap, but in the end it went the way of Christopher Hasse, who was badly delayed early on as well. So Jake Dennis, whose career has been helped by the Racing Sept Foundation, wanders over to the car, and the number 3 WRT Audi then is the fastest. Good mix at the top. You've got Audi, Lamborghini, and then Mercedes with Bortolotti and Gounod second and third. And times recorded by 27 of the cars. The 27th being Andy Soucek's Bentley, the 26th being Stephen Kane's Bentley. There is something not right with the Continental GT3s, which is disappointing to see because they're great, charismatic cars. They've got some great drivers, and we'd like to see them further up the field, that's for sure, but you never really know what to read into a warm-up session where teams are working on different things. Just look at the order and the gaps between, and you see how close it was this morning. The Dennis Scotthorst Audi ahead of Engelhardt and Bortolotti by 52 thousandths. Jean-Luc Bobelic and Jules Gounod third, ahead of Marcus Winkelhock and Will Stevens, Christopher Meese and Enzo Eve fifth, Norbert Siedler sixth fastest. So to have a quick look back at some of the best bits of the session, everybody given the option of going out, not everybody pouring out on track, some staying in the pit lane, and Daniel Kalvitz getting it a little bit wrong early doors as he drifted wide into the first corner. Somebody else in strife was Clemens Schmidt, who had this drama at the Villeneuve chicane through the gravel, and then with smoke billowing out of the right-hand side of the car, limped into the pit lane, which is where he stayed. And that was the end of the session as far as that car was concerned. 27 Lamborghini had a little drama over the curb and launched itself at the first chicane as the rest of the teams cycled through the pit stop. So we look forward then now to what should be a very good main race, which is getting underway at 3:30 local time. We'll see you then. Bye for now.